Hey, friend, welcome back to the Summit Up podcast, a podcast that is focused on bringing happiness to the beauty industry, and it's powered by Summit Salon Business Center. I'm your host, Reid Evans, and thank you for taking time to hang out with us today. And this episode is for those of you who are looking to have financial strategies for your salon, and really, how do you start thinking more proactively and less reactionary? How are you going to be able to make sure that you're aware of what financial blind spots you may have? And if this is something that is interesting to you or you're curious about it, this is going to be an incredible episode for you. And also, if this is your first time listening to Sum It Up, just thank you. Thank you for taking time and taking a moment to hang out with us. Now, today I am joined by the Chief Financial Officer of Summit Salon Business Center, Kevin Robinson, who is hailing from Nova Scotia, Canada. And I'm just so excited to jump into this conversation. So Kevin, thanks for being here.
Thank you, Blake. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so I love whenever you're sending over some of the notes for the show that you talk about one of my favorite topics, which is in salon leadership. We need to be more proactive and less reactionary because it actually saves you so much time in the long run. And then, of course, in a financial sense, it's going to save you a lot of money. So I would love to go there first, actually, is like, what are some things that you feel like you see salon owners are very reactionary about?
Well, I think there's like a concept of, being a stylist and then becoming a business owner. So we kind of make this shift from, working in your craft to becoming a business owner. And those are totally different skills. So especially when you may be starting your salon or you're coming into an existing one, like you move from working on the business, in the business, and sometimes there's really no clarity of like making that distinction of like what role you're taking that day, that week, that time in your business. But it's about sort of finding that balance so that, when you're in your business, you're sort of working in the ship, you're moving as you go. It's kind of getting that reminder to step back and pop your head up and say, where are we going? And try to make some planning around it to make, your life easier. As a business owner, you wear many hats. So it's about being selective with your time and, understanding maybe where to focus, so that you can make a plan for the future. So you have the right people in place, the right policies, the right structures. Again, it kind of goes back to shedding your skin from moving from just a stylist to also a business owner, and starting to think about some of the stuff that you can correct to, make your business run more smoothly, have better peace of mind, enjoy the journey, and be a better leader for your team.
Yeah, and so when it comes to blind spots, I think that they're hard to spot because you're not aware of them. So what are some things that kind of come up that you find like salon owners constantly are not aware of?
Well, I think the financials specifically seem to be a bit of a black box. Some owners are more keen here, and some want to kind of ignore it, if you will, or feel like, hey, I've got a CPA on my team or part of my professional suite, so I rely on them. But they sort of want to stay away from it. And it's one of these things where, as a business owner and ambitious stylists and salon owners, like, it's hard to maybe at times be sort of say, what, I don't really understand what that means, or saying, just nodding and going along. But the truth of the matter is, to be fair, is where would you learn some of this stuff? The timing it takes to become a stylist and be in the salon industry, there's someone else that's training that long, if not longer, potentially in accounting and finances and some of those pieces too. So, I think it's about resetting your limiting beliefs to saying, okay, if I'm going to be a business owner, I need to understand some of this information. I don't need to be a CPA level to sort of insight, but just have some baseline understanding of financial literacy. I think that's where maybe some folks fall short. And really it comes down to having the data come in, through the bookkeeping. That's where the transactions come in and then they get organized. But really making sure that you've got good processes for getting that data into the business. So some of the common pitfalls that I see or mistakes is really either, cheaping out on bookkeeping or trying to get everything caught up at once, or being really slow to provide information, because this is a feedback loop. And if you have a delay on getting the information in, you have a delay on getting it back. And when we look at financials, we're always looking in the rearview mirror. And the slower we are and the bigger delay we make, the further we are from reality. So it's really hard to make changes. It's really hard to use this information to, understand where you need to put your time or your energy or what needs to change to, reach your goals.
So when it comes to the bookkeeping part of it, because I so many of my salon owner friends, I have some friends that wait till the very end of the quarter. God forbid, some of them, I know a couple that wait till the very, very end of the year. But how often should someone really truly be keeping up with their bookkeeping?
Monthly. And it's sort of scary when someone says they wait till the end of the year because you could be, wasting money all year long and not even really realize it, which
Yeah.
is very scary. So if you're on it on a monthly basis, again, you're getting that feedback loop. You can see where your money is going. You can see what endeavors are profitable, what's not working, and you can really understand like what you can afford. What does the business allow? So if you're considering maybe a leasehold improvement to improve the look of your salon, or you're considering buying your building versus rent or upgrading your space, you can get a good idea of like what can my business handle for additional expenditures? What can I afford? And I think that's key for knowing because I find a lot of business owners and stylists, they're operating from emotion. It's like what a beautiful space. I want to make my space nicer. I want to pay my people more. I want to do all of these things, but without really grounded understanding if this is helping their business succeed and be sustainable or if it's making it nosedive. So you really, that monthly basis, I think is absolutely key. And, back to what I was talking about in terms of like financial literacy as well, like I feel like a lot of owners wait until the end of the year for their CPA to, inform them of, how they did. But oftentimes these conversations don't really get to results. It's about like, hey, we're making some adjustments for tax reasons. There have been some changes. We're going to roll over something old that happened. It's very technical, which often brings no value in terms of like what's happening from operating results. But you really never get to that conversation. If you do, it's an inch deep. You don't get to go real deep on, some areas of opportunity for reducing your costs or making a sales goal for the next year, or making sure the information you have is actually correct.
Well, and in my experience, it's like no one knows your numbers the way that you should, and also like no one's going to make the changes that you should. Like, as a shareholder team, we last year we're looking at things that were just like unnecessary expenses. Like, I remember like our office expenses were like through the roof and we were like, what is going on there? But we
Yeah.
realized we had to make a big purchase that lasted us 2 years, right? And so we were like, okay, well that's where that thing is. And then we realized something else was really expensive, but like that was us. That was the owner team, paying attention to that. Whereas like our
Sure.
CPAs are amazing. We love them. But they're not going to be sitting down with us being like, look at this. What about that? Because they don't know. And it's not their skill set. Their skill set is to maximize their tax strategy, So
Yeah, exactly. And keep your business compliant, right? And those are sort of two separate things. And that's sort of something that I preach, if you will, is like, we collect this information for compliance reasons, but there's so much information in them that we're just like leaving it all on the table if we're just doing it to meet those regulatory requirements. And one other thing I'll sort of add too, you talked about how often. I think it's a conversation of how often should you review this information, but like in what context. So what I always recommend is to see, okay, if you have your P&L for the month, it's great to see the P&L for the same month last year. So
yeah.
you can really contextualize it because, hey, okay, we broke $250,000 in sales this month. Is that good? I mean, it sure sounds good, but if we did 300,000 last year, not good. But if we did 180,000 last year, great. So I think contextualizing it is key. And then what the professional business owners I see do and what we would implement is really adding on a budget and projections there too, which I know some SSBC coaches, make as part of the program. So when you have a view that shows your results this year compared to the same period in the previous year, compared to your goals, that right there gives you so much contextualization to say, okay, we're doing better, we're making progress or we're not. And these are some of the areas where I need to improve, whether it be increase my sales or find ways to get better margins or speak to my team. And coming back to the idea of like business owners have so many hats to wear, you have so many challenges and problems to solve. And another thing that I say oftentimes is trying to distinguish between a kitchen fire and a dumpster fire. A
Yeah.
kitchen fire needs to be like put out immediately, right?
Yeah.
A dumpster fire, frankly, we can let that burn,
Yeah.
So it's really to understand what stuff needs immediate attention because it's such a high impact item or it has such big consequences, and what stuff can we say, hey, we can put that off because we've got some bigger fish to fry, and these take priority.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense. I mean, because we always constantly refer back in the summit world of like rocks and sand too, and like what are the big things that you need to focus on, and then the smaller things will trickle around it. And I like that too. You can
That's
just
good.
let the dumpster fire burn just a little bit. um, so when it comes to are there any other blind spots that you feel like are massive, like massive things that salon owners miss?
Yeah, I think the other thing too is back to the financial literacy is just assuming that the profit and loss or the income statement is everything. What most folks like don't realize is that there are not debt payments on there or paying for assets. So, for
Right.
example, it's not uncommon for a business owner to say, "Hey, like we're making $25,000 a month. Like we're making great money. We should, you know, do a leasehold improvement. We should take on more." And it's like, well, you actually have about $10,000 a month in loan payments for the first leasehold improvement. Maybe you bought the
Mm,
business from someone else, so you're paying off that loan. Maybe you're have some equipment that you're putting through the business or whatever. Or there's some tax there that is owed as well, that your sales tax that you need to remit at some point. So I think the key thing here is that you have your P&L, which is important. It sees a profit, which everyone wants to know about, but also comparing to the balance sheet so we can see what else comes out after we go through those items, and that your bank account doesn't reflect what that P&L is. So a lot of times there are people say, "I have a profit, but why does my bank have no money in it?" So
yeah.
these are sort of the separations that need to be considered sort of in tandem together. Um, and when I talk about the balance sheet, and the simplest way to put this, because a lot of people will say, like, I just don't really get what the balance sheet is. And the simplest way to put it is it's a net worth statement of your business, what you
Right.
own
Yeah.
versus what you owe, right? So you can constantly look at that to see if my business is growing in net worth. Do we have assets that are getting, exceeding our liabilities? Or are we taking on more debt even though we're getting better sales, but we're shrinking in assets? So just look at that like a net worth statement, and also remember that those balances and the profit you have is not cash. And also recall that everything we're looking at is in the past. So if you're getting a statement at the end of the year, or you're getting it 2 months, 3 months delayed, that cash balance is irrelevant, frankly, because so much has changed. You've paid payroll, you've paid rent, you've also sold services. So a lot of this is, again, timing, looking at them together, and understanding that this information doesn't necessarily translate directly to cash. So, I would really look for, if you feel like you're having cash issues in your business, is to work with your bookkeeper, or if you have a fractional CFO or a controller, to really help you put together cash flow statements to understand where are the bottlenecks, where's the cash going, so you can understand what must be true for you to free up cash. Whether it be to pay off that debt, or to stop providing services for people that said they're going to pay you later, or whatever it might be. You can really identify the areas where cash is getting sucked up or is just not coming where you expect it to.
Yeah, and so you mentioned a couple of different things that I've been learning that some salons have. So you could have bookkeepers, of course, are always so crucial. But you could also have like fractional CFOs, and then you can also have financial controllers. Can we dive into that? Because I think that would be
Let's
really
do it.
interesting. Because I think a lot of people may not realize that there is so many different things that you can do in terms of that.
Totally. Well, so the bookkeeper is taking all of your data, all your transactional data that's coming through your bank, your POS, and they're categorizing it to the right categories, to the types of sales and services, and also to the types of expenses that you'd incur. A controller, usually a small business, a bookkeeper and a controller can kind of keep one role, or if you have a great bookkeeping firm, for example, that can help you with this, because what the controller does is make sure that you kind of do a hard close. And what this means is that the bank is reconciled, so your statements say what your bank account balance says at the end of the month. If you've bought any assets, or you've taken on any new debt obligations, the loans are put in the books properly. They're recorded in a table or a schedule of all of your assets and all your loans. The controller really just makes sure that everything is complete. We're not just entering transactions. They close periods and make sure that the transactions go on the right periods. And there's some compliance there. So again, with SSBC Financial Services, like we would offer something I would call a kind of a bookkeeping controller combination because we provide the statements every month. We do a full close where in larger companies, you could see where you might need two different roles because there's so much transaction, so much categorization, and then there's really a big responsibility of organizing a close. A fractional CFO or a full-time CFO is really taking all this information and saying, now let's look forward. Okay, so we want to make projections or budgets for next year so we can see how much we're spending with our suppliers. Okay, this is a big impact in our gross profit margin. So we should reach out to our suppliers and show them how much we're going to spend next year so we can maybe get better pricing or better terms. Or maybe we want to do a leasehold improvement next year. So we need to make some projections to show the uptick in foot traffic that we're going to get in our salon so that we can go to the bank and get proper financing to get our leasehold improvement across the line and get those funds so we can pursue those projects. And then overarchingly is deciphering these financials too, back to the business owner to say, here, there is a financial literacy gap there too. It's giving them the information to say, hey, our sales were, what we expected, but we spent way too much. Maybe we need to review our compensation plan. Or maybe we didn't get the sales we were looking for. The CFO would ask questions like, hey, what is our sales strategy? What are we spending money on to drive sales? And could we kind of investigate what's giving us a great return and what's traceable on our marketing spends? And a CFO also helps with other things like risk, for example, like again, the CFO is always looking forward. So it's really helping the business plan, also identify risks. Maybe it's implementing some cybersecurity measures. It's also making sure that, maybe purchasing. Maybe we want to say, okay, not everyone in the salon gets a credit card. Maybe we just want to have 2 credit cards and we want to make a purchasing process. So they're helping kind of create processes to protect the business in the future. So as it grows, you can be prepared for what's going to happen and kind of reduce any of those risk areas. So I hope that provides some clarity of bookkeeping is really categorizing the data. Controller is really ensuring everything is complete, accurate, the right time periods, and really putting an organization on closing those time frames. And then the CFO was helping the business look forward and put the pieces in place so they can pursue the growth that they're after.
That's incredible. And then when it comes to like a fractional CFO, is that a service that Summit offers, or is that something that you would typically find like an external person?
Yeah, not currently. There are fractional CFOs. It's kind of a really becoming I wouldn't say a
It's like a
trend.
thing. Yeah.
It is a thing, and I
Yeah.
think it's a fantastic thing to be honest with you, because it's one of these. It gives smaller businesses access to skills that would only be available to large companies. It's why every publicly traded company or large company has a CFO because they can justify it. They have the complexities. But I think we come from a world where if you are thinking about part-time or casual labor, you just assume it's unskilled. We're moving
Yeah.
to a world now where you can get highly skilled people on a part-time basis, which I think is an amazing thing because it gives access. When you're looking at trying to find a fractional CFO, I would really consider someone that has some industry knowledge, has experience operating, because when it comes to CPAs, I kind of liken it to like lawyers. If people say, okay, Kevin, you're a CPA, can you give me some tax advice? And I say, well, do all lawyers go to court? And the answer is no. And
Yeah.
CPAs can vary from being, in the tax system and compliance, audit, mergers and acquisitions, but a fractional CFO was someone that has operational experience. So I've worked as a CEO, I've worked in my own companies, and the key is when you're making recommendations to say, hey, this is what we're going to pursue, these are some of the changes we have to make or sacrifices. I'm not just calling from a spreadsheet and telling you. I understand that there are people on the other side of these conversations. There are suppliers, there are relationships, there is the lifeblood of the business on their side. So you really want someone that understands operations, not just someone who came from maybe specifically an accounting firm or some technical role like that.
Yeah, yeah, because that's where you run into the people who like suck the soul out of the industry, and like it's such a people based and relation based industry that like I worked with a group of people and I watched them allow that to happen, because they're like, well, we're just gonna jump from this provider to the next provider, and it was like, oh, cool, so you're gonna let 2,000 hairdressers just switch color lines because you didn't like the numbers look like, and then the numbers were so like such small margin differences that I was like, man, this is crazy. And I was like, this is why like I think industry relevance is so important, even when it comes to financials, because like numbers say one thing, but people are our strongest asset in this industry.
Absolutely. And one of the things that really attracted me to working with SSBC is that, these are experts in the salon industry that run their own salons. They're
Yeah.
also very successful business owners. So, I think in terms of being an entrepreneur as a whole and, whoever you work with, it's key finding people that you can work with that are a community and can be supportive, but also have been where you've been, because we live in a world now where there are a lot of self-designated experts. And I think that's where SSBC really shines is that you've got successful salon business owners that have built sustainable businesses now helping, the next generation or the new wave of salon owners or existing ones that need support in this area. So, no, I think it's key about having that industry relevance.
Yeah. And then you've also, and actually, while we're on this subject too, because I think that for a lot of people who become salon owners, it happens half the time like on accident. They just accidentally become a salon owner. They're just like, oh, well, I want out of what I'm doing, so I'm going to open up my own space. And then you have those who are like really just driven, and it's been a business strategy for them. And I love the verbiage that you used in our notes, which is like, how do you shift from just being just a stylist and a service provider to being a CEO? Because I think like that leap is hard. And when I listen to someone like my founder of my salon, Joanne Powers, like she was behind the chair for 27 years, and at some point had to break away from being behind the chair, not because she wanted to, but because she had to, because she realized she had a group of people that needed to lead. I came up in a way where it's like I was a stylist who always knew I wanted to be an owner, and I was, I always say I'm like raised by the Summit system, so I always grew up with that business savviness, and I was always paying attention and learning. So I feel like the way I've stepped into it has been natural progression. Whereas when I hear Joanne's story, it's like I was kind of like forced away from the chair because the business needed it. And now Joanne is one of the best CEOs I've ever met in my entire life. Just so savvy on all aspects of the business. So how can one take that leap without losing some of the things that they're passionate about too? Because I think that when we're dealing with millennials and Gen Z salon owners, like that passion for the craft like sometimes trumps the financial part of it. So I would love to dive into that.
Yeah, I mean, I can give sort of my personal take on it. I think of two things. One thing is just investing in yourself. I found in my career and other entrepreneurs that I've worked with, the moment you start to really have maybe an identity crisis or you feel like you've hit a ceiling or it's getting really hard, it's a great time to say, okay, I got to invest in me because I can't really be the best that I need to be. This business isn't going to just get better on its own. And that's kind of where it comes down to as a business owner is no one is there to move it for you. No one is there to speak to one of your employees about something that a policy that they're breaching. No one is going to kind of save you, right? So I think the best kind of thought process there is just when things get tough is to invest in yourself. Reach out to other professionals that, have help here, or find books, or speak to people, join a community, get support, speak to others to pull you through. Because I think that's absolutely just like necessary for enduring business ownership. It comes with its highs and it comes with its lows. So it's really important to have a community of people and other experts and people that you can speak and talk to. The other thing I would mention about that is when I look at my calendar, I look at my priorities. So if a salon owner is trying to like, stick with their craft and they're, still want to be a part of them is still a stylist, of course, but also they want to evolve as a business owner, like use your calendar religiously for one, just to start tracking where your time's going. And secondly, look at it in the past week and say, and I know, yeah, so when I look at this, I can see where my priorities are. So, if I want to become a better stylist or if I want to maintain my practice there, is there time? Where is the time showing to do that? Or if I want to become a business owner, where am I making time to work on my business or work in my community or work with a coach? And now create your calendar in the future. Design it to have those priorities in there. Again, as a business owner, you get sucked in so much to what's happening every day. You really need to be more purposeful with your calendar. You can't be a passenger Right. So I always think it's like, hey, those are some of the things I would think about in terms of like maintaining priorities, shedding your skin and evolving as a business owner and as a professional, and because, we don't need to put ourselves in a bucket like, hey, we're a stylist and we're a business owner, or we can be both. I'm Kevin, you're Blake, we define who we want to be. And I think using the calendar to define your priorities and then bring things in to be purposeful there is absolutely key.
Yeah, you're touching on a lot of things that that's been the toughest pill to swallow. Like, I joke all the time. I have 10,000 jobs, and like, that's why, first of all, my big advice is set office hours and use Calendly.
Yeah.
This is not a sponsorship. I'm working on it. I want one with them, but Calendly, honestly, like, and basically, if you're not familiar, basically Calendly is like, this is such practical advice, but like, you can send a link to somebody, and then they can just book time with you, like they're booking a literal appointment with you, and you just set your office hours, and then you just set it and forget it. It's amazing because then it's hooked up to all of my email addresses, all of my calendars that I have. It's even synced up to my wife's calendar, so she knows when I have calls. Like, it really is like, it changed my life, and I feel ridiculous sometimes being like, here, pick a time. I feel a little like whatever, but it's honestly the best thing I've ever used as someone who wears multiple hats. And I literally have like 30-minute summit call, or 30-minute Redken call, or 30-minute one-on-one with the salon. So I'm able to see what's next. And as my day shifts through, I'm able to like actually understand like what it is. So I love that advice. I'm a big fan of a calendar, obviously.
Well, yeah, I think that's
Yeah.
great. And also going back to what I talked about, having a community of like-minded individuals, is you share these tips, these tricks, these tools. You just told me that was life-changing. I
Yeah.
don't know how many things, I mean, I have a few things that are life-changing too.
Yeah.
But like you can really get a ton of benefit from collaborating with these folks. And again, there's so much more value you can get from it.
Yeah. I mean, I totally agree. Yeah. Just, man, like, I probably got probably an hour and a half of time a week away from going back and forth with people on setting up times. I'm just like, here's the link, go for it. And so
Yeah,
it's good.
it's tangible.
That's great. So then, let's talk about other, like, not just blind spots, but common mistakes. So what you put down was like what timing and accuracy is everything. So I would love to dive into what that means for you.
Yeah, I mean, I did touch on this a little bit, but again, it's really trying to get, you got to take responsibility for getting information because, you're providing information and you're sort of getting something back in the sense of bookkeeping, or you have systems such as, your bank feeds, QuickBooks, POS, other systems specific to the industry. So really, it's like take responsibility because you want to get this information back as fast as possible, and it really starts with you. So again, I would really urge people to say, what's the quickest way or the quickest possible time frame you can get this information over, so you can get it right back and start to get some of those insights. So that would be honestly my biggest recommendation. And then also, again, reviewing it monthly and looking for specific views on the statements and putting them in a way that you can compare and contextualize, because I think that's really key. And when we talk about thinking not reactive, but like thinking ahead and being proactive, when you make a budget or a projection for the future, like it really helps you determine like what must be true for you to double your income. If you know your margin percentages or your net income target, well, then how much in sales you have to do to, double your income. Or if you want to pay your people more, or you want to rent a bigger bougie space, it's like, okay, what does our top line need to be to like afford a space such as this? So, I would say that, using this information, planning ahead, these are some of the mistakes that I really see the most, because they're just not using the information. They want to ignore it. And then they're trying to make decisions and they really can't. It's guessing, it's emotion, it's infatuation with different opportunities and a story we tell in our head. So I think the key is not only getting the information in fast and getting it back to you, but just taking the time to review it. And if you don't understand it, bringing in partners into your world that can help you understand it, so you can actually use the information. Otherwise, you're paying a lot of money to get all this stuff done and a lot of work. Don't leave that info on the table.
Yeah. That's awesome, because I think just being able to grasp all that is so wildly important. And then let me find one more. So as we go into a lot of basically the one topic I wanted to jump into is that right now we're showing that consumer spending is higher than ever, and that actually the beauty business is growing more than ever. And but then you turn on the news and it says that the world is burning to the ground, financially speaking. We don't need to talk about the rest of it. And so, what advice do you have for a salon owner that might be in that reactionary state of like people have no money? And like I understand, I do want to be clear that there are people struggling,
Yes.
but it shows numbers don't lie. Like people are spending more than ever on beauty. So, what advice do you have for an individual that's kind of in that reactionary mindset?
Well, I mean, my simple first thing that comes to mind is essentially focus on what you can control. And secondly, live in an abundance mindset, not a scarcity mindset. And honestly, people say easy for you to say, right?
Yeah.
It's much easier said than it is to be done. But when it comes to me, when I want to have an abundance mindset, I actually find I spend more. So when I'm out in my community and someone's raising money, I'm giving them money. If I see something I like, I'm buying it. Like people act. It's funny how people will reflect or mirror your what you're doing. So if you feel like you can live with an abundance mindset, and I don't mean spend freely and be crazy. I'm also an accountant telling you to budget your money, but ultimately it's like if you give out these vibes and this energy of like, hey, I'm living in abundance, it's actually incredible how everyone that kind of engages with you takes almost more of that mindset as well. So what I would say is if you're trying to like break through that and you can't get through the scarcity mindset, you live in abundance for a bit. If you want people to spend and engage with you, then go and spend and engage with others too. It's actually incredible how fast that circle starts to come back around. And I see a lot of successful wealthy people preach this, and a lot of people criticize it because it's like, oh, easy because you're wealthy and you can afford to do so and stuff. But a lot of them will say, hey, I did this before I could, just to get this sort of the momentum going on this. So, I would act the way that you want your customers to act. Secondly, is I think this is a great industry because Peter Mahoney, the president of SSPC, when we first met, was saying like, hey, like hair is not going to stop growing and it needs to be maintained and cared for. So this is a really great. I love industries that essentially aren't going anywhere for the foreseeable future, right? So I would say this is that this is a needed service, not you mean arguably some of it would be nice to haves and luxury pieces for sure, but it's generally speaking it's a needed service. People are spending money on it clearly as you've demonstrated. So I think you just got to be confident in that, and then if you're investing in yourself and trying to bring as much value and joy and such an enriching experience to your clients or customers, consistency is the key there. Just keep at it because what I've heard, and I can't remember where I heard this, but I love it, is most people get tired of their marketing before the market knows about it.
Yeah.
So if you're serious about rolling out like a really great experience and you've made some great changes in your salon to have a great experience, from the time they enter to the time they leave, and you get everybody on board, it's very consistent. It's going to take some time. It's immediate action, delayed result, right? So what I would say is consistency is key, and you got to remember that you need just to endure that hump because everything you're doing today is probably 3 to 6 months away from being recognized by anybody else. So I would say, hey, stick with it. Take on an abundance mindset. Understand that you're in a fantastic industry that's needed. If you are your best self and you focus on giving the best experience, you do that consistently. The market share is yours.
Yeah. Yeah, there's so many good pieces of advice over there, because I talk about with our team all the time, like the customer that you're serving may not be in the same financial mindset as you, so you've got to. This is truly like where you've got to like walk the walk before you can even do it, because you've got to pretend in some ways, and I always say, like, if you're always talking about how expensive things are to your guest, what message are you sending to them? You know, what are you making them think about? You're probably making them think about how expensive you are, and they probably weren't even honestly thinking about that before. So, and that's just on a service provider level, let alone if you're a salon owner trying to, you know, up your game, up your level, and that breakthrough. And a lot of it is mindset. So I love that you touched on that. You're probably one of the first financial people I've heard talk about that. So I really do appreciate that, because I think that it is a lot of it is mindset and how you act out in the world.
Well, and it's one of these things too where, I've been a firm believer of, your attitude accounts for a lot.
Yeah.
But also just wording choices as well. Like, expensive or investment, so it's trying to decipher. Essentially, think about some of your vocabulary, the conversations you're having today, look back on them. Heck, go to ChatGPT and say, hey, I had conversations with XYZ today. How do I make that more abundant, or take a better tone that way? That would probably surprise you by some of the word changes you can make that make an impactful difference. And like you said earlier, like it's financially, what's expensive to your, to a customer, it could be nothing to you and vice versa. So sometimes it's like we're always afraid of raising our prices. We're always afraid of, talking about the price of things, when the truth is it's really in our own heads. Again, it could be a lot to you, but it could be nothing to your customer. So it's really just sort of breaking free of some of those stickiness in our brain and kind of resetting our mindset around them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, before we move on to our signature question, Kevin, where can people connect with the Summit Financial Services?
Yeah, so we have a financial services is directly on the SSBC website. If you'd love to, like, I really encourage you, if this is an area where you feel like you're lacking or you'd love to get some support or help, book a discovery call with us, or you can book directly with Nikki Salmon. It's nsalmon@summitsalon.com. As mentioned before, like, the service we offer, I think, is fantastic. It's not just bookkeeping. It actually kind of ties in some of that controller aspect. So you get your financials on a timely basis, and you also get some of the information back that comes with it to really see the statements each month, the progress, and get that additional help if you want to understand some of that information. So that's the best way to reach out there. And aside from that, you can follow me on Instagram. It's Kev_Robin. I do a financial literacy course as well that's available that I'd be happy to share with folks. And other than that, you can find me in Mexico in January. I hope to meet some people there as well.
Yes, we're very, very excited. We just had an episode come out talking about Unplugged, actually. So
It's going to be amazing.
Excited. I'm so excited to be there. But thank you so much, Kevin, for everything that you have done and contributed. And what does happiness mean to you?
What does happiness mean to me? Well, I looked at it like this: is happiness to me is obviously happiness is a choice, I think. But happiness for me happens on the other side of really hard things, whether that be raising kids, starting a business, doing something physically hard. Happiness is on the other side of hard things. So I want everyone to think about that, especially as you're, maybe having a hard time in your business right now, or you're trying to do something as a parent or a community member or in your community, that doing hard things is good for you. And there's always happiness and fulfillment on the other side.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. And thank you, friend, for listening. And if you love this episode, please take a moment to send it over to a friend or a colleague or a business partner. And if you really, really loved it, then we would be honored if you took a moment to rate and review us on wherever you are streaming us from. But we will talk to you next time. Thank you.